Hello everyone, welcome to the start of this video. In this video, we are going to discuss about a country named New Zealand. And before we start our discussion, don't forget to leave a comment to support our group. We really appreciate that. The reason we made this video is to do our social collaborative project for the lessons of sociology, geography, and also history. This this project will serve as our final exam score, and that's why we are doing our best to make this research as accurate as possible. So if there's anything wrong, we would like to have the response just put it in the comment. Thank you. The reason we choose New Zealand as the country of choice to do our research on is that New Zealand is not visited as much as other countries. Generally, we compare these numbers to Australia. Why? Uh, Australia is located near New Zealand, and to be honest, they're not that much far away. When we compare it to other countries like America or even countries in Asia, there are far less tourists going to New Zealand, and that's why the other reason for us to choose New Zealand as our selected country is that so we could tell other people and so we could also maybe promote New Zealand so that maybe the interesting culture of this country could captivate people's attention and maybe make them go to New Zealand.
History of New Zealand. The first topic of our video is the history of New Zealand. And for this topic, we have our friend Miu and Marcel that will explain this topic.
Hello, I'm Yucha.
Dan saya Marcel.
Today we're going to talk about
Sejarah dari negara New Zealand.
New Zealand was the last large and livable place in the world to be discovered. The first people to arrive in New Zealand were the ancestors of the Maori. The first settlers probably arrived from Polynesia between 1200 and 1300 AD. They discovered New Zealand as they explored the Pacific, navigating by the ocean currents, winds, and stars. Some tribal traditions say that first Polynesian navigator to discover New Zealand was Kiwi.
Jadi, hari ini saya akan membahas tentang siapa itu Kupe. Orang Eropa mengaku sebagai penemu Selandia Baru atau New Zealand, padahal suku Maori telah menemukannya ratusan tahun sebelumnya. Ya, menemukannya ratusan tahun lalu sebelumnya adalah Kupe. Lalu, tahun kapan Kupe tiba di Selandia Baru masih sangat diperdebatkan. Begitupun juga tahun berapa armada besar kaum Maori tiba. Stephenson Percy Smith, seorang antropolog di abad ke-20, menerjemahkan kisah yang direkam oleh Hoani Tewatoro. Dalam kisah ini, kedatangan Kupe terjadi pada tahun 750 dan armada besar yang berimigrasi tiba pada 1300. Namun, sebuah studi pada 2010 dipimpin oleh Janet Wilmshurst dari Land Care Research Selandia Baru atau New Zealand mengambil sampel karbon dan menemukan bukti kolonisasi manusia antara sekitar 1230 sampai 1280. Nah, sekarang saya akan memberitahu sedikit tentang Kupe menurut orang Maori. Menurut kepercayaan suku Maori, Kupe adalah orang Polinesia pertama yang menemukan pulau di Selandia Baru atau New Zealand. Perjalanannya ke sana itu tidak sengaja karena kesulitan memancing di Hawaii, kampung halamannya. Rupanya masalah besarnya adalah ada gurita besar milik pesaing atau musuh Kupe, yaitu Muturangi. Kupe berangkat dengan perahu sampannya atau kano untuk membunuh gurita tersebut. Dalam perjalanan pengejaran itu, Kupe tidak sengaja tiba di New Zealand dengan temannya yang dikenal sebagai ngake di perahu sampan lainnya yang disebut Tawi Hirangi. Dia mengejar makhluk itu sampai ke Selat Cook yang dikenal sebagai Raukawaka, dan akhirnya gurita itu dibunuh. Ketika si Kupe ini dan kawan kembali ke tanah asalnya, si Kupe ini menggambarkan New Zealand sebagai tempat tanpa orang. Jadi itulah cerita tentang Kupe.
The first European to arrive in New Zealand was the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman in 1642. The name New Zealand comes from the Dutch Nieuw Zeeland. The name was given by a Dutch mapmaker. A surprisingly long time passed, around 127 years, before New Zealand was visited by another European. The Englishman Captain Cook arrived in New Zealand in 1769 on the first of three voyages. European whalers and sealers then started visiting regularly, followed by traders. By the 1830s, the British government was being pressured to reduce lawlessness in the country and to settle here before the French, who were considering New Zealand as a potential colony. On 6 February 1840, at Waitangi, William Hobson, New Zealand's first governor, invited assembled Maori chiefs to sign a treaty with the British Crown. The treaty was taken all around the country, as far south as Sauvage Strait for signing, by local chiefs. More than 500 chiefs signed the treaty that is now known as the Treaty of Waitangi, or they call it Te Treaty o Waitangi. The term Maori did not exist until the Europeans arrived. It means ordinary, and Maori used it to distinguish themselves from the new fair-skinned European settlers. Maori came under increasing pressure from European settlers to sell their land for settlement. This led to conflict, and in the 1860s, war broke out in the North Island. A lot of Maori land was taken or bought by the government during or after 20 years of war. Meanwhile, in the South Island settlements things were going very well. Settlers set up sheep farms on the extensive grasslands, and Canterbury became the country's wealthiest province. Gold was discovered in Aotearoa in 1861 and then on the west coast, helping to make Dungeon in New Zealand's largest town. In the 1870s, the government helped thousands of British people start a new life in New Zealand. Railways were built and towns sprang up or expanded.
In 1882, the first shipment of frozen meat from New Zealand made it successfully to England, proving that exporting chilled meat, butter, and cheese was possible. New Zealand became a key supplier to Britain. With an economy based on agriculture, much of the forest that originally covered New Zealand was a clear for farmland.
Draco, soldier. She make it clap, clap, clap. She make it clap, clap, clap. She make it. She make it clap, clap, clap. She make it clap, clap, clap.
In 1893, New Zealand became the first country in the world to grant all women the right to vote. Not long after, New Zealand was the first country to offer state pensions and in the late 1930s, state housings for workers. New Zealand was keen to show its loyalty to the British Empire and sent troops to fight for Britain in the South African War in 1899. It was the first war New Zealand soldiers were sent overseas to fight. New Zealand became increasingly conscious of their own nationalism. In the late 1890s, they turned down the chance to join the Australian Federation. Instead, New Zealand became an independent dominion in 1907. Thousands of New Zealanders served and died overseas in the First World War. The 1915 landing at Gallipoli in Turkey is regarded as a coming of age for their country. It established the tradition of ANZAC, as known as Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, and a pride in New Zealand's military achievement and its special relation with Australia. Anzac Day, which remembers the Gallipoli landing, is a public holiday on the 25th April each year. It is marked with increasingly well-attended ceremonies. New Zealand troops fought overseas again in the Second World War in support of United Kingdom. However, the fall of Singapore shook New Zealanders' confidence that Britain could guarantee the country's security. With most of their forces effectively stranded in Egypt and the Middle East, it was the United States that protected New Zealand against Japan during the war in the Pacific. As a sign of friendship with the United States, New Zealand fought in Korea in the 1950s and against much popular opposition in Vietnam in the 1960s. Britain was an important and assured market for New Zealanders' farm products, but when Britain joined the European Economic Community or EEC in 1973, New Zealand lost that important market. This was a blow to their trading community and to the country. Luckily, New Zealand had already begun diversifying its export trade, so when Britain joined the EEC, that event encouraged New Zealand to widen its outlook. They now sell their farm goods and many other exports to a wide range of countries.
Nah, sekarang saya ingin membahas tentang sedikit dari budaya New Zealand. New Zealand telah menjadi negara dengan beragam budaya, khususnya sejak tahun 1980-an. Berbagai kelompok etnis telah didorong untuk menetap di sini, yaitu New Zealand, dan sekarang New Zealand jauh lebih multikultural. Menurut data dari Sensus Nasional 2013, 25% orang yang tinggal di New Zealand lahir di luar negeri. 15% adalah Maori, lebih dari 12% adalah Asia, dan lebih dari 7% berasal dari negara-negara kepulauan Pasifik. Bahasa Hindi adalah bahasa keempat paling umum di New Zealand setelah bahasa Inggris, Maori, dan Samoa. Nah, sekarang saya akan memberitahu contoh sedikit dari budaya New Zealand, yaitu tarian haka dan hongi. Apa itu tarian haka? Haka adalah jenis tarian atau tantangan seremonial Maori. Haka biasanya dilakukan dalam kelompok dan biasanya mewakili suatu pertunjukan tentang kebanggaan, kekuatan, dan persatuan suatu suku. Kini haka dipertunjukkan untuk di pernikahan. Hal ini dilakukan untuk menghormati pasangan yang sedang menikah. Lalu juga tarian haka dilakukan di tim olahraga New Zealand seperti tim rugby New Zealand, yaitu All Black, dan juga tim basket nasional New Zealand. Mereka sebelum bertanding pasti melakukan tarian haka ini. Hal ini bertujuan untuk memberitahu bahwa mereka tangguh dan tidak takut akan musuhnya. Dan berikut ini adalah contoh dari tarian haka. Nah, itulah tarian haka. Lalu, sekarang hongi. Apa itu hongi? Hongi adalah salam tradisional suku Maori, suku asli New Zealand. Salam ini menandakan kedamaian, kehidupan, dan kesejahteraan antara tamu dan tuan rumah. Tradisi hongi dilakukan dengan saling menempelkan ujung hidung dengan lembut yang mampu menciptakan koneksi napas kehidupan di antara kedua orang. Nah, contoh hongi ada di gambar berikut ini. Nah, itulah beberapa contoh dari budaya New Zealand yang saya bisa sampaikan di dalam sejarah New Zealand ini.
For the geography of New Zealand, or in Maori, Aotearoa, is located in the southwest of the Pacific Ocean. This country consists of two main islands, namely the Northern Island, or also known as Te Ika Maui, which has 3/4 of the entire population of New Zealand, and also owns 42% of the land area. The South Island, also called Te Waiponamu, has a smaller population than the North Island, and also has 56% of the landmass. New Zealand is a unitary state divided into 16 councils, 11 regional councils, and 5 unitary regional councils. The second largest city, Wellington, is the capital. It is the southernmost capital in the world.
New Zealand is situated on the water continent known as Oceania, which can be seen only by Australia, plus everything else in Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. Technically, Australia and New Zealand are together, called Australasia. However, this is strange and not that accurate because New Zealand is not located on the same continent shelf as Australia. This has led to the consideration that New Zealand is included in a new sub-region known as Zealandia. The name and the concept of Zealandia was proposed by Bruce in 1995 as the fragment continent of or small continent.
Culture in New Zealand is very fruitful. The Maori speakers traditionally came from about 100 or so Kiwis, or tribes or people, spread out throughout both the islands, most in the northern part of the country, the largest being Ngāpuhi, at over 100,000 people. People in New Zealand has a unique way of calling each other, like how Indonesian people call us Indonesian. We call people from America Americans. They call themselves Kiwi in New Zealand. That's a very unique way to call their brothers. Their culture is a very huge integral factor that plays into what it means to be Kiwi or a New Zealander, essentially. I mean, instead of hello, you'll often hear the Maori word kia ora as a greeting. Most schools teach the Maori language in elementary class, and there are immersion schools as well. Today, the majority of native speakers are found in the North Island.
As we know, Kiwi have their own unique language and how they greet people by saying, instead of hello, they say kia ora. And same thing as our next topic, hongi. Hongi is a ritual that is performed by two people pressing their noses together. The greeting is used at a traditional meetings among Maori people. In the hongi, the ha means breath of life is exchanged in a symbolic show of unity. And in my opinion, hongi is a really unique way to greet people, and I haven't really seen that type of greeting in a long time, even in my region. So yeah, what do you think, Phil?
Yeah, in my opinion, hongi is honestly it's a very cute way of greeting another. Other than being cute, it is a very respectful way in the meaning of the ritual.
Mm-hmm. Even though it's like they pressing on their pressing each other nose, but right now the government they actually don't let people do that ritual because there's a lot of COVID right now, and it's a little bit dangerous to do.
Yeah, so due to COVID being around,
Mm-hmm.
hongi is being restricted so that nobody can do hongi
Yeah.
in traditional ceremonies or rituals. Other than hongi, there's another unique trait of New Zealander or Kiwis. It's a culture called haka. Haka is a traditional dance, and almost everyone on the island knows this traditional dance. And that dance is performed by both men and women. The dance is also known for its aggressive movement, loud chanting, and intimidating facial expression. The haka dance can be used in a variety of situations, ranging from birthday parties, funerals, and even weddings. And everyone takes part in it, whether you are ethnically Maori or non-Maori. It's a tradition that really unites everyone on the island. The haka dance is something that you should watch, preferably live when you go to New Zealand. But now, since we are still waiting for the official announcements to do traveling, you should go on YouTube. Just look up a video on haka dance. You will see a lot of people talking loudly and doing aggressive movements, as I've said before. The haka is very unique as it's one of the most used dance in their culture, and there is more than just one type of dance in the haka. Mainly, it is differentiated by the purpose of the haka, but most famously for New Zealand, their most famous haka is used by one of their most famous sports team, their rugby sports team called All Blacks. If you look up on YouTube, look up All Blacks, AALLBLACK, and you will see a lot of videos of the New Zealand team doing their haka before their matches even started. The haka represents them giving respect to the other team, and also they are giving respect to the gods that are watching over them. And if you could translate the meaning of the haka, and so that you would know what is the purpose of the haka for different occasions. So, Plastic, what do you think of this unique haka dance?
Firstly, I think it is really interesting because, of course, in our region, in Indonesia, we don't really have this like a dance that unites everyone on the island. And
Yeah.
I think that's really cool because even though you're not a native Maori, they would still accept you if you do this dance together. And it's really cool that they unite just because of this dance. That it really shows that this dance, this traditional dance, really means a lot of things for them.
Yeah, and just letting it out, not because of the culture. It is an old dance, and it's amazing that
Hmm.
it has lasted for years and generations, and even now people still do it. And in New Zealand, almost everyone could do the haka. That's something that maybe we should learn from.
And now we're done talking about the culture and also all things about New Zealand. Now we're going to shout out some places that you should visit when you go to New Zealand. We have done our research and there's tons of places that is great to visit, but there's too many to put it in this video. So here's some few places that we thought a really great place that you should visit. Number one, there's the Bay of Islands. The first one is really it's like the best place you could go in New Zealand. Mainly if you're really a big fan of fishing, sailing, and do anything with water, this is a really great place to go.
Auckland is known in New Zealand as one of the biggest cities there, and also its international air travel. Many international flights arrive in New Zealand through Auckland Airport, which makes it an ideal city from which to start your exploration of New Zealand.
The next destination that you could visit is Christchurch. Despite being rocked by 4 large earthquakes between September 2010 and December 2011, Christchurch has made a true comeback. When you go to Christchurch, you will see evidence of the city rebirth everywhere, including new buildings made out of old shipping containers and other unique materials like cardboard. Cathedral.
One of these natural formations that you should visit is the Moeraki boulders in Dunedin. Another of New Zealand's amazing natural rock formation. The Moeraki boulders can be found on the east coast of the South Island, just north of Dunedin. These magical spherical boulders are around 60 million years old, and you will find them scattered all along the Koehoke Beach.
The next great place that you should also visit is Waitomo Glowworm Cave. The unique Arnocampa luminosa can only be found in New Zealand, and there are literally thousands of these stunning glowworms found beneath the ground of Waitomo.
You can also visit Katikati Bird Gardens. This bird garden essentially is a place where there almost all of the native birds in New Zealand gather. So maybe you could go there and give a visit, and you could maybe see almost all of the native birds living there. And maybe you could go interact with them.
Now we know a lot of places that is great to visit when you go to New Zealand. Which place would you visit, Philbert?
One of the places that I want to visit when I go to New Zealand is Hamurana Springs. The tropical vibes of the rainforest just gives a relaxing vibe,
Hmm.
and I feel like it's one of the most relaxing places because of the waterfall near them.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Well, for me, I really want to go to Waitomo glowworms because I never seen those in my life. And can you just imagine an insect that people all hate, and it glows in the dark. So I think that's really cool.
And I think it's also good for scaring people that hates bugs.
Yeah.
We have reached the end of our video. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. We hope you liked our presentation. If so, please give a like and maybe comment on things that we are wrong or things that you think we are right and you appreciate it that we put it in.
And even though this video might not as long as other videos, we hope this video will give you enough information about New Zealand and also make you learn a lot of things about New Zealand, and maybe you could give a visit New Zealand next time.
Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll understand what we brought today, and have a great day.
Semoga kalian bisa mendapatkan informasi yang belum kalian ketahui tentang sejarah New Zealand. Dadah.
Thank you.
Thank you.